Ford Motor Company is an American automobile company founded by Henry Ford and 11 associate investors in 1903. In 1919, the company reincorporated and Ford, his wife Clara, and their son, Edsel acquired full ownership. All of them, plus the Ford Foundation, which was established in 1936, were sole shareholders until January 1956. This was when the public sale of the common stock was first offered. The company manufactures cars, trucks, tractors, auto parts, and accessories. Its headquarters are in Dearborn, Michigan. In this Ford's Motor Company story video, we will be discussing the milestones and journey of this automotive corporation. Before we continue, please subscribe to our YouTube channel by hitting the subscribe button below to get a notification on our next video. Henry Ford built his first experimental automobile, which he called the Quadricycle, in a workshop behind his Detroit house in 1896. This was while he was serving as chief engineer for the Edison Illuminating Company's main Detroit facility. After the founding of the Ford Motor Company, the first Ford automobile was assembled at the Mack Avenue plant in July 1903. 5 years later, in 1908, the very successful Model T was introduced. The demand for this automobile was so great that Ford developed a new method of mass production to manufacture it in enough quantities. In 1911, he founded the industry's first assembly plant in the United States in Kansas City, Missouri. He later opened the company's first overseas manufacturing facility in Manchester, England. In 1913, he presented the world's first automobile assembly line. And, to step up labor productivity, in 1914, he introduced the daily wage of $5 for an 8-hour shift instead of $2.34 for a 9-hour shift. The company's first international sales office opened in Paris in 1908. In 1911, however, the company began to expand worldwide. In 1917, factories were opened in Ireland, England, and France. Denmark, Germany, Austria, and Argentina followed shortly after. In 1925, factories were also opened in Japan, South Africa, and Australia. By the late 1910s and early 1920s, Ford began building a huge industrial complex along the banks of the Rouge River in Dearborn, Michigan. The plant incorporated all of the components required for automobile production, including a glass factory, steel mill, and assembly line. When the other Ford Motor shareholders opposed the idea of building the River Rouge plant because of the enormous cost, Henry Ford, who owned 58.5% of the company in 1906, bought them out and appointed his son, Edsel, as president of the company in 1919. By mid-1914, there were more than 500,000 Model Ts on roads all over the world. By 1920, Ford was successfully making 50% of its cars in the US and 40% of all British cars. Generally, half of all cars in America were the TS model. By 1923, the company was manufacturing more than half of America's automobiles. In the late 1920s, Ford had more than 20 assembly plants overseas in Europe, South Africa, Latin America, Canada, Asia, and Australia. At this time, Ford had become the most famous car brand in the world. In 1922, Ford had acquired the Lincoln Motor Company that was founded in 1917. This was to produce luxury Ford Lincoln and Continentals. The last Model T and the first new Model A were produced in 1927, followed by the first Ford the Fifth 8 in 1932. In 1938, Ford introduced the first Mercury, a mid-priced car. After Edsel died in 1943, Henry Ford returned as the president. However, he handed it over to his grandson, Henry Ford II, in 1945. Henry Ford II strived to reorganize the company's tangled financial management system and reinvigorate its corporate culture by hiring talented young managers. The failed introduction of the Edsel, model years 1958 to 60, happened together with his achievements. Henry Ford II continued to lead the company as CEO from 1945 to 1970, and as chairman of the board from 1960 to 1980. Ford Motor Company began with limited diversification in the 1950s and 1960s, but by the 1990s it had returned its attention to its concerns about automotive and financial services. Between 1989 and 1990, Ford acquired Jaguar, a British luxury automaker. Also, in 1993 Aston Martin became a fully owned subsidiary. Subsequent acquisitions included the Hertz Corporation, a car rental company, in 1994, Volvo Car Distribution in 1999, and the Land Rover brand for sport utility vehicles in 2000. Ford also bought a significant part of the Mazda Motors Corporation. In 2003, Ford Motor Company saw its 100th anniversary. That year, the Ford GT was released, together with limited centennial editions of select Ford vehicles. However, when Ford struggled at the beginning of the 21st century, it was compelled to start selling off these brands. Ford sold Hertz in 2005, and by 2007, Aston Martin was sold as well. In 2008, the company sold Jaguar and Land Rover to Tata Motors Limited from India. Ford began selling its Mazda shares in 2008, and it was sold entirely in 2015. In December 2008, President George W. Bush announced a financial bailout to help the big three automakers Chrysler LLC, General Motors Corporation, and Ford, to avoid the collapse of the struggling auto industry in the U.S. The plan immediately freed up $13.4 billion in government loans from the Troubled Assets Relief Program, TARP. Since they were able to avoid bankruptcy, Ford reported improved sales and market share in 2009. The growth was in a way because of the federal government's Cash for Clunkers plan. This gave consumers about $4,500 to trade old cars with new, fuel-efficient models. Also, Ford has taken several cost-effective actions and has focused on stronger brands. In 2010, the automaker sold Volvo to the Chinese company Zhejiang Geely Holding. Months later, Ford stated that the Mercury line would be discontinued. However, as sales declined, the automaker tried to expand its products. In 2014, the Ford Mustang celebrated its 50th anniversary with the introduction of its sixth generation. The 2015 F-150 was launched in 2014 with an aluminum-intensive body design. Ford Smart Mobility was founded in 2016 to develop, among other things, autonomous vehicle and car-sharing businesses. The next year, the automaker announced that it would expand its range of electric cars. In 2018, however, Ford announced that it would phase out all cars except the Mustang and Ford Focus Active. This way, the company focused on pickups, SUVs, and crossover vehicles. What do you think about Ford's Motor Company story? Thanks for watching this video. Please share your opinions in the comments section below, and remember to click the subscribe button to be the first person to watch new videos on this channel.